But carry on talking about cats, bro.
Well, I mean, they're fascinating. But I think it's their terms, their attitude, their demeanor is completely opposite to dogs, which we know.
Yeah.
But which makes it a little bit more, how can I say, like admirable. Because I love dogs. I'm a dog person. But I'm kind of appreciating the fact that the cat's kind of like, well, if you got a bond with it, it won't have that same bond with anyone else.
It's true. Because they're very discerning with their choices of, you know, who they like and who they don't like. And I think that's why a lot of people look at cats and they don't like cats. Yeah. Because dogs are a bit more undiscerning. And with cats, it's kind of... You see, cats, obviously, I wouldn't say will be... Like, a cat won't really win a fight with a dog. No. Most likely. But... in terms of, if I look at a cat and I get scared of a cat, because I don't know cats, because of the sharper claws, I'm going to be more hesitant of the cat than the dog.
Well, the dog's easier to deal with because, like, it grips your leg. That's all it's really going to do. It's going to... Like,
and you can kind of get a hold of it.
No, you can grip it.
That thing's going to go around you. It's going
to destroy. But I think I agree with you on that. Like, I think that's what dog people have in common. Like guys like us, it's you're so used to a dog's behavior. You know how to handle a dog. Like, I know how to grab your dog.
Yeah.
If it was acting up. Obviously, that's familiarity. It's also having staffies and staffs. You kind of know how to handle. You don't get frightened. Like,
yes.
Also, I've had multiple dog attacks. Like,
serious?
Yeah, I've been bitten in the face before.
Sure, what happened?
That one's a little bit of a messed up story, though. So I won't go in too in depth because it's a bit of a buzzkill.
Okay.
But a family dog of mine, I landed up, long story short, old dog, border collie. I was doing my prac hours in my early days of studying, earlier days, because studying just hasn't ended. And I was late. I overslept, being 18, always sleeping.
Yeah.
Late, got up, I was like, shit. I reversed out, and next minute I felt like this massive thud. Like, long story short, dog was under the car. I had to get the dog out. It was traumatic. And I was trying to get her. I was actually going to try to take her to the vet, and I went down and go get her, and she literally turned and grabbed my, so that's why I got a scar on my lip here and my chin. This one's actually, like, you can't see it anymore, but she literally gripped onto my jaw. But you don't blame her, right? Technically, I'd ridden over her. It was horrible. But, so, yeah, pretty much gripped me here, and then I had to get rid of her there, and then I literally had to leave her where she was. And,
sure.
SBA, the vet had to come out. And,
jeez, bro.
But I mean, it's because she was so old.
Yes, yeah.
So at the time.
And in shock.
Yeah, well, listen, I knew it wasn't personal. It was merely defensive. I'd clearly try to pick her up when I shouldn't have. So it's not really cool.
So your dog's now, how old are they?
Is it 2 6, I got 2 of them, 6 and 4.
Okay, so the Amstaff's 2.
Yeah, Amstaff's the oldest.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
So he's quite old.
What's his name?
Piros.
Okay.
Named him after Piros Dimas.
And so are you Greek?
No, I'm Portuguese.
Portuguese?
Yeah.
And
so that's Piros. That's actually a Greek name.
Okay.
So that's one of the greatest weightlifters of all time.
Okay.
So I named him after, obviously, one of my favorite weightlifters.
Yes. Well, now that we're recording anyway, so might as well introduce you. Josh, bro, thank you so much for coming through. Awesome. You are pretty much a coach that, I've been looking at your Instagram and seeing the people that you train. It's remarkable to see, the variety, obviously, being a strength and conditioning coach, the variety of people that you work with. You work with professional boxers, professional rugby players, everyday individuals, obviously. And it's awesome to see, a boxer, a rugby player, whatever, come to you and, you showing them how to improve on their particular sport through strength and conditioning. So do you want to just introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Awesome, yeah. So simply put, I'm a strength conditioning coach, and I think a lot of people, before I even get caught up on that, I think that's a beautiful thing about being invited on something like this, is actually bringing clarity to what that is. Because I think everyone's some form of specialist, someone throws performance in there. And obviously, you must maybe just interrupt me if I rant too much today.
No,
but
go ahead.
It's not actually that I want to rant, it's merely going, I think, it's kind of like behind my brand being performance purist. I'm a big thing on purism. So, and I love being around people who are true to what they like. It doesn't mean I change my form. It just means the strength conditioning, and that's why I think it spoke to me over everything, is that I can't really get bored with it because it's so diverse. So I'm either going down a rabbit hole on everything prehab oriented. Okay. Then there's all the performance models. Now you've got every performance model you can think of when it comes to sprint, power, speed, agility. That has its whole model. Then you've got everything, then you take strength over. Then there's different models of strength. Like I originally broke through with Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting. And that's how I got I produced my first world champion in powerlifting from scratch. Then I went down that rabbit hole. Then there's taking those strength and those power orientations and then moving those back into certain sports, because everyone tries to assume that some things are painted with the same brush. Now, without getting too complicated, things are also still very simple. So I know it sounds so vague with what I'm saying here, but I think people understand strength conditioning, and the reason why I say I took it upon myself to actually try to pursue it to its full entity is the best way for me to explain is this. How many strength conditioning coaches do you know?
Not that many. Maybe only in the top tier sports athletes. They have strength and conditioning coaches.
Right, but do you know of them?
No.
They
just mentioned my strength and conditioning coach, but you don't know.
And it's actually like a term that's very, and I'm glad now, but it's very, it's like a household term now. The problem I have with that is it's going like, to be honest, the most people you'll ever speak to are actually personal trainers, and then you'll get the odd sports scientist. Now, neither is wrong. The problem is that they each have their own role and responsibilities. Now, I talk about like roles and responsibilities quite a lot. Personal trainers. Now, that is its own model, but we understand, I'm sure you've done a bit of personal training to a degree. You obviously you're online now, but it's personal training technically in an online capacity with your own way of doing it. It has its bounds and limitations, okay, on what you can and can't do. It's prescription orientated, and that's to its degree. The problem is that your prescription is actually not based off the ability to actually break it down and apply it and coach it and teach it.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is not wrong, but it's roles and responsibility. Now, sports scientist, other side of the field, get your degree, but your application and your understanding is pretty much based off anatomy and obviously the kinesiology on movement. Just those two. Now, a lot of times, inversely, the problem with sports scientists, they actually don't know what to do with that information. So they're great at data capturing. Testing, phenomenal. Obviously, that's what they designed to do as a sports scientist, is test the human body. It's taking that information and actually applying it to athletes. I find there's a gap. Then the understanding of what needs to be done in personal training is there, but then executing it into the client is not there. Yeah. And that's kind of why I like to believe a strength conditioning specialist kind of sits in the middle, but also sits outside. Because
it's bridging the gap.
Bridging the gap, but obviously it's also so broad. And that's why when someone says they're a strength conditioning coach, I'm kind of going, listen, I'm interested now, because it's such a big term, because it's supposed to be so broad. So it's different if you say I'm a strength coach. So a lot of times, like say, certain athletes will bring me in and they just call me their strength coach. Listen, I don't really care about the title. Like, the title's not really a thing. It's just going, because I'm actually only technically in that capacity doing one form of expertise, and that's actually strength. So say my pro cyclists, not trying to work on the energy systems any more than they're already doing. I capture that information with their head, like say cycling coach, but any of their aerobic work and their capacity work and working on the FTP, that's all in their coach. However, when it comes to developing their power back on the bike, that's where I have to come in. So I understand them being a strength coach, and some coaches are actually just powerlifting coaches, or they're just weightlifting coaches. None of it's wrong. I think just people get the line so blurred on what that means. It's the same as like obviously I work with Jack. And obviously, you've had him on here a few times, and I'm sure you enjoy him conversation. I think you might have worked with him.
I did. I worked for him for when I went to Canada for WBFF Worlds.
Awesome.
He helped me with my prep then,
Right. Perfect hands to be in.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, now here's the thing. So I've done a lot of my own even yourself, you're a transformation coach, okay? I've done my own transformations with lots of clients over the years. I still don't want to put on that hat. Not because I don't have the information. Like I do cuts, all my fighters, I do their cuts. All my athletes that have to do cuts for weighing and that. I do so many cuts, but I'm not trying to be a body transformation coach. Doesn't mean I can't do it. Doesn't mean I don't have clients doing it. But it's back to that purist thing. It's like, if you take on that hat, it has to be your lifestyle, but through and through, because it's something that I take quite seriously. That it's something that you can't just fake, if that makes sense. Because I'll be honest with you, there's a lot more money, if you want to be blunt, in transformations, because everyone wants a six pack.
No, it's true.
All girls want a better booty. It's like a thing now, right? When it comes to true performance, people only want it when they realize they actually don't have any performance. The problem is that how many people really try to perform? Nothing. You got Kippy, who goes to Virgin Active, you guys, well, I pressed the 45.
I want to actually look better. It's not actually about
performance.
Yeah.
The problem is that when you expose people to performance, which is something I've been very fortunate to do to a large degree when I work with anyone, it's almost like this opportunity to see what they can do becomes open. It's literally like seeing what happens to your physique change, but in your ability. And the reason why I prefer the performance always over the physical, now not that I don't believe people shouldn't be in shape and you should be in shape, etc., etc. It's going, that performance teaches you so much more about yourself, emotionally, mentally, who you are. And it's something that's like how you feel about your physique, right? The problem with that is by the time you get onto the stage, it's based off interpretation. You don't win because you're better than someone. Doesn't matter what it is. You win based off how judges are, what they're looking for on the day.
Yeah.
That bothers me immensely. So I love everything about bodybuilding and physique training. I love all of that. The discipline, I like it. The training, there's a lot of bullshit there. There's a lot there I can go into on the training.
I want to do that.
Yeah, we will. But the end goal. So like I've had lots of guys, even like Jack tries to get me. He's like, man, you really got to come over a little bit and let's see what we can do with your physique. Small waist, I've got small joints, but broad shoulders, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I said, I agree with him. I said, everything but the finish bothers me. Because I want to beat you because I'm the better athlete, and I want to lose because you're the better athlete. Not because, his opinion dictates it. Now, granted, I mean, we also know what's obvious, but I'm saying when it comes down to like, we both at 5%, we both 95 kilos, we both, feathered on our quads, and we both striated, like, it's technically an opinion. Yeah. To a degree. Granted,
and that opinion will change from day to day, right? Because one week those judges like one thing, and then the next week they like something completely different, 100%. But they're still the same category, which is...
Well, so let's throw a little bit of span in the workshop. Do you think body dysmorphia has always been a thing, or do you think it's more of a thing now because everyone's trying to pursue a better physique and they're all based off judging how they look?
I think body dysmorphia has always been a thing because what I believe is, because society's always, society's image of what's perfect has changed throughout time, but society's image is always going to be society's image. So I believe in the 60s, everyone needed to look like an hourglass.
Yeah.
And people that weren't looking like that, people maybe too skinny, maybe people that, didn't look like an hourglass had body dysmorphia. So I think it's going to be constant throughout time because as human nature, we want to look a certain way to please other people.
Listen, I couldn't agree more. But would you say it's amplified?
Through social media, probably.
All right. So where I'm going with that is I agree on the body dysmorphia always being there. It's the same as, mental illness always being there. It's pretty much a lot of our weaknesses as humans. Always been there. It's not going to change. But some things get amplified. So the reason why I say that is I'm like, when you constantly it's a catch-22, right? You post a picture of, say, yourself and your fiance, you got a t-shirt on, you got a dog. What's your engagement like?
Terrible.
Right? You standing shredded in your kitchen.
It's better.
Captain Shreds, you should be on your wall. What's the engagement like? Now, you don't know what's happening to that engagement.
Yeah.
It's not your fault because your engagement's doing one or two things. It's either people are so drawn to it because they're inspired, or they need to see it to make themselves feel like that's what they need to become, which is body dysmorphia, which means
it creates dysmorphia in my mind because I see, if I post photos of her and I and the dog, I don't get likes. So, why would I want to do that? Let me go post photos of me looking better.
Well, this is the thing. I learned, so I did go on the cover of Men's Health. Then it's posted a little about it. Yes. And I'm not big on, when I say I'm big on socials, like you said, you went through my
socials. Just stopping there with the Men's Health, just so people who don't know. So you won Best Coach Award.
Yeah, so I've been Men's Health Best Coach Award actually twice.
What does it mean to be Best Coach?
Actually, I think it's because I'll be honest, because I believe that isn't a term you can actually fully own. It's the same as me saying I actually know everything. I don't. I don't think I'll ever know everything. I think because of how much I've studied, I realize how much there still is to study. So I think it was just them acknowledging me. This is my interpretation, right? In the state that they saw how many multiple athletes I work with across so many circles while still running a business and training moms and dads, latis, taking that information and then seeing that I'm working with Olympians, world champions, taking people to the highest level, and then realizing I'm doing it across multiple codes and no one else is doing that. Then they wanted to acknowledge that, and then obviously just of general feedback, people that they've worked with, people and obviously I've written for them a few times. So I used to write for a few different media, or a few publications. So they became very familiar with my work, and then they started seeing who I was in those circles. Because it's hard, I think, because I'm still in the private sector of coaching. I'm not, say, a Springbok strength conditioning coach, or I'm not the. If you are that coach, the problem is that you're still stuck in one sphere. Whereas I think me being able to work with so many diverse athletes, is being able to show that on a coaching level.
It also helps you learn more about the human body because you're not working with rugby players who are just performing for rugby, working with boxers,
dude, it's
cyclists.
surreal, man. It's like I'll have SPU training, I've got, you know, world-class bodybuilder, then next minute I've got a boxer, but this is on the same hour. So literally in the same hour I'll have, you know, you've got SA's leading bodybuilder, then I've got a pro cyclist, and I'll have a pro boxer, and then I'll have a normal client.
Yeah. How will those kind of trainings, you know, to increase their performance differ? Whereas like Subu, who obviously is working on the aesthetic, but he's with you. So how would that differ to, say, let's say Chris, you had him this morning?
Yeah. So I think, because that's actually, it's a good question, but at the same time it's a very broad question.
Yeah.
And it's going, I problem solve. So this is actually what I was going to say. The same reason why I actually haven't finished my own introduction of who I am is because it's too, I can't just, I'm a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
Boom, okay. The problem is that that's actually a very broad term, and that's what I want people to understand. So back to that question of that with the training, I problem solve. So Jack presents to me what's wrong with SPU. I have a look. Back to why I say bodybuilders don't train well. I don't think a bodybuilder truly understands movement. So you get two extremes. You get everyone pumping iron, and then you get the odd guy trying to be like Kai Green and overemphasize mobility and stretching just so you can have crazy posing routines. You've got two extremes. There's no actual functionality into the training. And I'm not saying standing on a Bosu ball doing curls. I'm just saying their warm-up involves taking a dumbbell and doing winging.
That's it.
Yeah, 100%, because again, remember, you got injured, right? You know, 2 years ago. Before.
Yeah.
It goes from that to cycled for 10 minutes to train. So the actual, how can I say, the understanding behind training for bodybuilding, and that's what you wanted to actually talk about, is so prehistoric, it's not even funny. It's way too prehistoric. And listen, the fundamental is the same. It's stress, trauma, recover, grow, and feed, right? So that principle hasn't changed. The application, though, is still prehistoric. So it's not trying to make it all precious and sweet, but it's kind of going, well, that's why to a lot of bodybuilders, because I watch a lot of patterns. I watch how people walk. Like, you know, when I walked in now, I saw you, I was just watching how you stand, demeanor. Then if I'd watch you walk in the gym, I'd also watch your gait, because that's what I do when clients walk in or athletes walk in. I've got to see what I'm dealing with for the day. So I have to see, how does this guy's mood look? How does his, you know, cognitively, is he on? Yeah. Is he a bit slow? Is he delayed? Because I can make or break his day, but I can also make or break the whole cycle, the whole prep. And it's taking that information to every intricate level, which is what matters in the big picture if you actually want to get guys to really level up, versus everyone going down your pre-workout and harden up. Then it's kind of going, well, no, that's very prehistoric. Because some things, I think you made a post the other day or something about taking time off from gym. Not wrong. The problem is that technically should be scheduled to a degree, because you also don't want to get in the habit of going, I feel like shit, I'm not going to train, because that's not always how it works. So that's why you'll see, like, we work with things like HRV, monitoring your daily heart rate variability, to actually know when you should or shouldn't be training, paired with consciously how you're doing. So back to your question on SPU, it's going, well, just like any athlete. So I've got Chris, okay, he's got XY injury, he needs to develop X and Y for this camp. That's what I have to address. SPU is going, okay, cool. Originally it was developing his back. He lacked development in his mid-back, paired with he was prone to X, Y, and Z injury. Cool, so now problem solved. You see what I'm saying? So it's more about what gets presented to me than I interpret it. I don't just walk in off the bat and go, right, this is what's wrong. I can take information when I watch you train and then go, okay, this is what I'm finding, this is what I'm thinking, and then I work back and forth, because, you know, you're not this fixed like organism that doesn't know how you feel, and you don't, you know, you're going to actually know, but I've got to ask the right questions to get that out of you, and we play that game back and forth. And that's why you'll see I talk with all my clients, or any of the athletes, it's going, we have a language. And it's about knowing what terms they do and don't know. So some guys, if you go, like when I work with a lot of fighters, ask a fighter, how you doing? Fine, great, strong, unbeatable, I can kill. Yeah. Okay, because they're constantly in a mindset of up talk. They have to talk themselves up. Then I play the game of, listen, this is not fight gym, slow your roll, how you fucking doing? How you sleeping? You're rolling, like, because what happens is they're so programmed. Now, once again, you're not trying to now make this guy a soft cock. You know what I mean? Like, at the same time, you're actually trying to get the right information out. Because you know what happens? This is where I lose my shit with people. You lie to me. I can see you're not well. And then you start underperforming in gym when you're supposed to perform. Now we've got a problem. Because this, in my world, numbers don't lie. You can't fake things. You can fake things in bodybuilding. You can fake things. If you're a good boxer, you can fake things. Remember, you're managing what you're doing in boxing. You're managing what you're doing when you play a skill sport. You play a rugby, you play a team sport. Even easier to hide your bullshit. So a lot of sports, you can hide your bullshit. If I want to, when it comes to training, you can't hide it because numbers don't lie. And that's kind of why when guys kind of go through that initial phase with me, they learn real quickly not to lie to me. Because I just pointed out quick, I'm like, no, you are flat. You haven't recovered. Then all the stories come out. So it's kind of going, guys need to learn to become a lot more honest about mentally where they're at, physically where they're at, and understanding that it doesn't make you lesser of an athlete to feel like shit. Sometimes you feel like shit, but you can still perform. And that's something you have to learn if understanding your programming. Sometimes you're not going to perform if you look at your programming and you look at what's happening and the compounding effect. So it's just taking information the whole time and problem solving. And then also learning that each guy's different. Sibs' work tolerance is actually like, and I don't mean to throw him under the bus, it's not as high as I would expect. But that's not his fault. It's not Jack's fault. It's the sport's fault.
It's bodybuilding, bro. It's bodybuilding.
Right? But I look at it and I kind of go like, I mean, he's a unit of an individual. He's a freak. He works hard. You've got Jack in his corner, unbelievably smart. But I'm kind of going like the sport doesn't actually allow him to reach his full potential. I think that's why he's taken to training a bit of the strength conditioning. That's why Jack values it as well. Because I look at it on all its models and I'm kind of going, there's so much more stimulation that you can do besides what you're currently doing. And I think that's what a lot of guys fall into the trap with bodybuilding, is they kind of get stuck in this mindset. Leg extensions, back squats, front squats. Then they change things up. They're doing their own circuit that they made up, a little bit of CrossFit. And, now they're gassed. Or, the steady state cardio on the stepper. It does my head in and they call it cardio. And I'm like, well, please explain to me what you think is making this cardio, to what degree, and why.
You're sweating, that's it.
You're just standing on a step.
Just burning a bit more calories than sitting down.
Right? And it's done with this minus intent because monkey see, monkey do. And I look at it and I kind of go like, because, outside of drugs, I mean, we know this, bodybuilding is huge with drugs. It's the same as those concepts. Drugs have hidden the fact that the training models behind bodybuilding and fitness are so shit. Drugs got them through that, so it still looks justified.
Yeah. Would you say though, like, muscle stimulus in bodybuilding, because obviously you said like leg extensions, to have those isolated movements, whereas, like obviously a deadlift is full body. Obviously bodybuilders still do deadlifts, but would you say like, let's just look at leg extensions. If you do leg extensions, you're isolating that quad, the movement of the quad and the development of the quad and the engagement of the quad muscles, but now, to grow that particular muscle. Whereas like if you had to take a boxer and you wanted to improve their quad, like what would you do as opposed to what a bodybuilder will go do in the gym?
So this is, and it's a brilliant question. I think because you see there will always be research to dictate showing that the isolated work can create a higher stress in that muscle with a higher contraction. So therefore it'll be always greater, more economical. Okay, it's also easier. Now I'm not saying you can't fuck my legs up on a leg extension with drop sets and holds and some blood starvation. Of course you can, right? You can create lots of hyperemia and trauma there, obviously. But I look at it and I kind of go, much like I would do with any of my athletes. So it's not even if they're about any of my athletes. If I do need to fix something, I still bring function into it. So we say from function to form and form to function. That's kind of what the bios do. So when I on-ramp from a bio in or into a bio out, when I work with them, it's big on that. So a lot of guys, like a lot of bio work, if you do any rehab work, if you've ever been injured, you'll see it, you're doing a lot of isometric work. Okay, that's just to create a high muscle stimulation. Then they actually want to introduce form. That form goes into function. Okay, so when I want to isolate something, I bring a bit of function into play with the isolation. So you can do like a Poliquin heel reach. So you got your 1 foot elevated, and you're just doing such a small movement for VMO stimulation, quad stimulation. You can go to cyclist squats, which are a big favorite of mine, which are other squat variations, but not as neurally taxing, but more muscularly orientated and taxing, especially if you look at the tracking of the knee and where your hip positioning goes. So I still bring a lot of, I don't actually ever go fully isolated. And if I ever do, it's actually more on an isometric level, and that's because we're in a plyometric or a dynamic phase of the training. So it's not that I'm against leg extension. I'm not against anything.
Yeah.
Really. It's kind of going, but you can't just treat everything like hammer and nail, hammer and nail, because that would mean that everyone that's ever done leg extensions would have big legs. And everyone that does leg press would have big legs. Everyone that's back squatted would have big legs. And that's not the case. So, and then you have some guys who then just immediately take the off-ramp to, it's genetics. I'm going like, no bullshit.
Yeah.
Because genetically speaking, like, you know, when I was a sprinter, I was 76 kilos. And then when I was my heaviest competing in powerlifting, I was 119. And there's no gear whatsoever. I'm not born to be a heavy guy, and everything I've done has only been drug tested.
Did you not enjoy being that heavy?
That sucked, Tying my shoes sucked.
And you are now?
I'm like 98.
And you're comfortable around?
Comfortable. Well, now I have to be because I'm supposed to be doing an ultra soon.
Okay, sure. How's that training going?
It sucks. Absolutely sucks. I hate it. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at running. No, I'm not a bad runner.
Long distance.
Yeah. Remember, I come from track, 100, 200, that's my game. You know, like, I had like a 10-3 to my name. Like I was quite a, I love being a powerful athlete. Then weightlifting, powerlifting is power.
Yeah.
ATP phosphate, that curb cycle, I can master it.
You were saying actually that, and I think it's primal and it's human. It's animal instinct to outperform someone as opposed to bodybuilding, which is visual.
Yeah.
So like for you, how would you, like obviously with Sibu, you're working on his strength and conditioning, but how would you say if someone wanted to do bodybuilding, is there a different, obviously you're implementing that with Sibu now, but is there obviously the better way is what you're doing with Sibu, but what is the different and better way to sculpt the body but still have maximum performance, muscular engagement and everything?
Perfect. So let's take this approach. Why don't we look at people becoming physical culturists? So let's just try that. Let's take the title away for a second, okay? We want to train together. Now we want to do some gymnastic ring push-ups. We're going to do some pull-ups. We want to do some broad jumps, and we're going to go for a 5K run. But we don't label it. The next day, we come in, we both want to do some heavy bench. But at the same time, we're monitoring our macros according to our stats and our TDE and what we need. So we're not eating like shit, we're eating well, okay? And our training is about mastery, a bit of performance, excellence, and pursuing greater achievements. So, week one, you're benching 80 for 3 sets of 3. And in that process, we're doing overhead pressing, and we're doing, lots of parallel push-ups and drop push-ups and more pull-ups, and you're learning better body awareness. And, by week 4, you're at 90 for 3x3, and you're constantly just making sure that your markers are moving. You're not trying to chase big numbers, you're not claiming it to be anything. And in the same time, with your jumps and your broad jumping. So at the end of the day, you're a physical culturist where you know how to lift any object. You know how to perform at any object. You stay in a relative condition that you can actually survive as a human. Because it's actually quite scary when you look at the mass of people. So when it comes to if you do wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you start realizing how many people can't defend themselves. If you do, I do a lot of shooting with the security guys I deal with, so the guys that do close protection. Then you start realizing how many people can't handle a firearm. Then you go to, in the gym, guys that do powerlifting and weightlifting. You see how strong they are, you realize how weak everyone else is. Then you spend time with the endurance athletes I work with, the Ironman athletes, guys that do ultras, guys that do some crazy things on the endurance side. You actually realize how unfit everyone is. Then you deal with wrestlers and you see how they're just the freaks of everyone, So you start going across here and you start realizing there's a model that we can actually all embody to a degree. Doesn't mean you still don't master one of them. The problem is that if you're a physical culturist, and something that I'm a big believer in, especially for men, it's using that entirety of the body. Now, people go, oh, that's CrossFit. I'm going, no, CrossFit's a sport. Don't get distracted now. CrossFit's model is about creating workouts, performing at that workout, and see who wins. Simple. It's actually not trying to, it exposes people to new things they would never do, without a doubt. I mean, it's why I've even coached CrossFit as the CrossFit Games. But it's going, that's a sport. It's not the same thing. But being someone like, if you take your prehistoric, your Frank Zanes, they were physical culturists. Franco Colombo, he could blow up a water bottle, he could deadlift his car. I mean, at 75 kilos, he could bench 180, 200, while still trying to pursue symmetry and body composition. So there's always that level of light athleticism. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah.
Whereas guys like especially bodybuilders, they get so precious, can't waste. So guys will gladly go smoke 2 packs of cigarettes outside the Virgin Active.
Because they know it's not going to affect their muscle, but right. I mean, they don't care about their lungs.
But I'm kind of going but you're not a physical culturist, you're not a purist. I've got no time for anyone like that. Not because I'm anti-smoking. I'm just kind of going, no, you're living on 5 mils of test a week. You're on everything from China under the sun. That's what's actually facilitating your bullshit training. That's why you can still afford to smoke. No other elite athlete I've ever worked with can afford that. So then you wonder why there's this demeanor behind bodybuilders on athletes. Because they're not.
Yeah.
Because what is athletic about standing on a stage? No, it's a beauty show. And I mean, folks can hate me all they want. I'm going to give it rocks. But there's nothing athletic about the endeavor. Because there's no performance. So therefore it's not athletic. It's a show.
Yeah.
And we're not hating, it's just, but this is where I go back, and if you look at it inversely and you work down, because there's no defined outcome of performance, the training doesn't hold them to an accountability of that level. So we used to always say this, like, we have sessions, no matter what athlete across any parameter, like if you talk to powerlifters, you talk to any athlete, there's some sessions in the week that they get so nervous about because it's so performance orientated that if they don't hit the markers precisely, it's deemed failure, or they're not ready, or they're not going to be where they should be. Okay? So there's this anxiety, there's this pressure, there's this stress. They can't fuck it up. They need a rest, they need to recover, cryotherapy, you name it. And you got to just go blast chest later with your mates.
And bodybuilding is easy, bro. People say the only thing that's difficult is dieting. There's
100%.
no difficulty in bodybuilding.
And even
training.
then, you might just have a predisposition to being leaner.
Yeah.
So you got a predisposition to being leaner. Like we all got that one friend that's super vascular, and you're like, see, what are you taking? What pre-work? Whatever stupid question you want to throw his way. Nothing.
Yeah.
I had some pancakes and a Coke. But then you meet his dad later, and you see his dad's also vascular. Veins draining down his calves. Dad doesn't train.
Yeah.
Now, listen, it doesn't mean that excuse him, but now that guy trains, put a bit more attention to it. Now he's a freak.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not against it, but it's kind of going like people don't understand that. Like, but the beautiful thing about performance, like, everyone has a ticket of entry. And that's somewhere where I say physical culture, and that's what I would change to answer the question in a very long picture. Is going, I would get guys to appreciate training in its entire value, its entire ecosystem, where they actually value what training means to them, what they can do, what they can achieve, versus becoming these narcissistic douchebags that think that, well, I'm fucking geared up, I'm the man.
Yeah.
The sad reality is that I do jiu-jitsu, I fight with guys, I box, I train fighters. That's who you worry about. I'm not worried about geared up frick there pressing the 50s for 6. But the problem is that because there's no definitive outcome of performance, his mind has to tell him the whole time that I am the alpha. When you deal with athletes and you spend time just around athletes, there's a constant level of pursuing excellence and mastery and really define outcome, that there's no need for them when they meet you to actually have that attitude. Because in their mind, they know what they have achieved or what they're trying to achieve. But if I constantly have to try remind you that I'm bigger than you and eye you out, it's because we don't actually get to compete. Because I don't actually get to show that I'm bigger. But why does it exist? Because humans are designed to compete. We're designed. That's why every guy will eyeball you when you're wearing a tank top when you're training. Not just because he's admiring you, it's because in his mind he needs to compete with you some degree. It's either going to be like, well, I look better than him, or I'm heavier than you, or I'll knock him out. Something so arrogant. Then
what's the best, to be the amalgamation of everything? What is the best thing to do? Obviously, like, is there a particular sport that you think that's the pinnacle, or?
Yeah. So if I had to say what's the pinnacle, it's wrestling.
Okay.
I'd say that's the most elite sport you can do to be the complete alpha. And I say like complete alpha, not like in a douchebag way. Like obviously everything is its own elitist way, like sprinters coming from that background. But with all the sports I've dealt with, if I see what's entailed in wrestling, and if you look at all of its energy system models, what training it takes, what the sport requires, it is the most elite. Obviously, there are sports that are more technical. The skill acquisition is harder. So if you like I work with golfers, there's a certain skill, precise skill there that you can't fake it. You can be the shittest athlete in the world and do really well there, but there's a skill that you can't just buy, you can't just train. You either have that hand-eye coordination and precise timing, or you don't. Same as boxing. You either actually like fighting and you're willing to acquire the skills to fight, or you don't. You can't fake it, because there's always going to be someone who's got your number. There's lots of guys who have been knocked down. You got to want to take that and get back up, and a lot of people aren't actually okay with that. That doesn't make them wrong either. It's the same as a lot of guys want to be shredded and in shape, but they don't actually want to diet for 10 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. So if I look at what wrestling takes, when it comes to the fact that you actually wrestle, pick up another grown man, and the intensity of it, what it dictates, plus skill acquisition, plus mobility, agility, power, and aerobic and anaerobic endurance because of how long the rounds go to what heart rate you're working at, paired with the fact that it's a flat out most primitive battle you could think of. you're trying to pin another grown man who's also trained to pin you.
Yeah.
It's like, boxing gets that close, but boxing is also a game of distance and space. Wrestling is about closing the space and being stuck in the space. So, a lot of boxers can be play very like defensive and play like off the back, and they can be safe, and if they've got reach or height, they're safe. Wrestling, you can't not be involved. That's not wrestling then. So it forces 100% off the back.
There's almost, there's contact 24/7.
It's max or nothing.
Yeah.
If it's nothing, you're not wrestling. You see what I'm saying? Well,
if you're not wrestling, you're out.
Right?
You've been eliminated. Yeah.
So I'd say it's like the ultimate, and I believe it's something that maybe would be really amazing for. Because I understand, like South Africa, especially like when you deal with all the sports, all the championships we've been to, we are Africa itself, but and especially South Africa, we're the gene pool of like talent. There's not a single sport we can't master in this country. Not a single sport.
Just need the money and the resources. That's
right.
The only issue.
And exposure to it. So like back to this, I'm like, imagine something like, obviously there's something I'm trying to do with strength conditioning in all schools. That's a project I really want to undertake. But imagine wrestling was introduced to you. Now, listen, it doesn't mean you pursue becoming a wrestler and you make that your life dream to become an Olympic. It doesn't mean. But imagine what would happen to you on a physiological level and a physical level if you knew how to wrestle from a very young age all the way until when you're 15, 16. Versus our 15, 16-year-olds get dropped off at Virgin Active, they do bars and tries with their mates, talk shits, chat to girls, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no physical excellence. Do you see what I'm saying? And then they just skim, well, that looks really big, and that's the pinnacle.
Well, bro, that's exactly why I've kind of tried to, that's why, obviously you're in Rowan. So I went to Rowan, I was like, bro, let's start training together, because he went to my school and I had him on the podcast.